Hi, I'm back with more books. Um, so I'm doing books that I've read in the past couple weeks, but also a couple that I did not finish because I wanted to talk about them. And, I gave them a fair shake. Like I read maybe 40% or something. I didn't just like read a page and then decide it sucked. I'm really sorry if you hate gum chewing. I might find this kind of annoying if I were listening to it, but some people like it. So if you're still here, thanks. So let's see what we got. So Wild by Cheryl Strayed. You are probably familiar with this book. It was very popular. It was became a movie, and it's a memoir about a 26-year-old woman who decides to hike the Pacific Crest Trail by herself, and the spiritual journey she went through. It's not like a how to hike manual or anything like that. It's she makes a lot of mistakes. She was pretty inexperienced. And yeah, it was, you know, more emotional than you might expect because she's going through a lot of stuff in her life and pretty easy to read. I listened to the audiobook. It's really pretty straightforward. I don't have much to say about it. It was fine. It had a good narrative, um, good pacing with flashbacks as well, so we really get a picture of who this person is and why she's doing it. And I don't know. I guess I put it at a B just because it was just fine. So next up, we have Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. I feel really bad about this. I was looking forward to reading this for many years. It was on my list. And I love the idea of bad feminism because feminism is not a cut and dry thing. And we all exist in this world. And it's pretty hard to, it's kind of like the idea there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. It's like you can only do your best to be feminist, but you live in a patriarchal world. You will look out for yourself and you want to indulge in certain things and you feel shamed for it. Like, oh, I'm a woman that enjoys reading stories about men who would be considered abusive or, I like reading about like a murder story or something that really doesn't serve women or, you know, watching a movie where women are sexualized and thinking it's kind of awesome, that kind of thing. And so she's saying, yes, I do these things. Okay, I'm a bad feminist. I get that. She kind of talks about intersectionality. That's great. Um, the crux of the issue, though, is these are essays, and they just aren't good essays. The first essay is all about bad feminism, and I'm here for it. I love it. It's about the pressures, the inconsistencies, or conflicted feelings you have about being a woman in this society, whatever. And then the next essays are just like random stuff. Like, I like the Hunger Games, and one time I played chess in a tournament. And it's just like, I think they're supposed to be funny, but like there's no funny central point. Again, I feel really bad because a lot of people love this book, and she's like a respected feminist author and stuff. And I get that she has a unique perspective. It's just from a writing standpoint and from an enjoyability, readability standpoint. I didn't care about really any of the essays, so I stopped reading it. Life is too short. I'm going to stop apologizing now. I'm being a bad feminist. Okay. Put that in the D. Forget about it. Okay. Moving on. Middlesex. Jeffrey Eugenides is about, it actually won, I think, a Pulitzer. And it's about a person who grows up intersex, was raised as a woman, and then we're getting the perspective from the grown adult male who's narrating about his life. But it goes all the way back to his ancestors, his grandparents, and they're Greek, and it's a lot about just like their culture, but they're like an inbred family, so it goes way back into their history, and there's a lot of context for all leading up to Cal, the main character, Cal's upbringing, and then his condition and how he comes to terms with that and everything. So it's like a coming of age story in a way. It's like a fake memoir, fictionalized, I should say. It's pretty long, but it's very, very well written. I totally understand why it got the accolades it did. People kind of regard it as like a modern classic. It was written, I think, in the 2000s. And I agree. I think it is like it's a unique perspective. It's very well told. Sorry, I'm really bad at descriptions. I feel like you just have to read it. The narrative is just really interesting. It's like this really omniscient first person, if that makes any sense. It's like when I was a sperm, this is what I was thinking. Like it goes that far. And it's kind of funny. It's witty, and it's got emotional points for sure, and it's got relatability and just being an adolescent. And an interesting family dynamic. There were definitely parts that were like, okay, it's getting a little slow. I don't know that it needs to change. I think it is written how it should be written. It just, there are parts that I just didn't enjoy as much because it was a little bit boring or whatever. It probably should get an S tier, but just based on my experience of enjoying it, I'd put it at an A. It is very well written though, so it really is like a 5-star book. But it's a slow burn. It's not going to be like a hilarious romp. I mean, it is sort of funny, but anyway. Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson is another one of those ones that was on my list for a long time and was getting a lot of praise from people who were mentally ill, as it's a memoir about mental illness. Jenny Lawson has several comorbid disorders, and I relate to that, and I was interested, but people liked that she took sort of a lighthearted approach to it, but was very, very realistic. She showed the gritty details, at the same time as being kind of funny. That's fine, but I didn't find it funny in the slightest. I swear, I just feel so mean sometimes. Humor is subjective. I get that. It just really, somebody on Goodreads reviewed it and said it's kind of like one of those, ooh, I'm so quirky. I'm not like other girls and I like unicorns and bunnies. Hee hee hee. It's like, it reminds me of people who had ADHD. They still do this, but like it was such a thing during the random culture in the mid 2000s. And where they'll be like, oh, a squirrel, oh, a shiny thing, oh, I'm so ADHD. And it's like, that's, I love that people want to make light of their disorder. I get that. I just don't really find it funny. It's a little bit contrived to me. She was like, I'm so damaged, I'm so messed up, I'm so random. That's where her humor was, and I just don't really find it funny, and it didn't feel like the essays really said anything. I think I'm finding I just don't like essay books, and I should stop reading them. So I'm putting in the D because I didn't finish it. Evicted. Matthew Desmond, I think, is the author. This is a very, very good nonfiction ethnographic study, I guess, of people below the poverty line living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who are dealing with housing crises, basically, over the course of several years, the eviction crisis in America, and segregation of housing, and just how incredibly hard it is to get back on your feet when you're evicted, how it influences unemployment and vice versa, and how much a lot of it is a discussion of what a factor race is in that. So it was really fascinating, something I didn't know a whole lot about, and I like how it's written as like, it's a nonfiction book, but it's really written with characterization. It's like a fiction novel, a literary fiction about a wide cast of characters, but they are real people. I think the best part about it to me was the last chapter where the author talked about what he went through to get this information. And by went through, I don't mean like, oh, poor author guy that suffered. I just mean it is a big and complicated undertaking because he wanted to report the truth. And so he had to decide where to insert himself to help and where to just let things happen. I imagine that would be really, really difficult. Yeah, so it's really fascinating, and I don't know of a lot of other books like it. That's just me. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's between an S and an A. I'm like really stingy with the S's though. And just because it is a certain kind of book, like it's more of an A than an S to me, just because it's, you know, it's journalism, essentially, which is fine. I'm just learning so much in all these books I read. I'm finally learning what I truly enjoy and what I just think is okay and what I hate. And that's great. Okay, so Queer, a Graphic History. I read part of this book in one of my other videos, you might remember. And I was hoping to do another follow-up, but I had to return it to the library. So, it was good, but it was not titled properly and it wasn't really marketed properly. It is not a history of queer life by any means. It is really an introduction to queer theory, which I'm very fascinated by. It's something I've always liked, something I studied in college, and I think it's super important. But a graphic history does not. It jumps around a lot. It's not very structured. It's not really chronological. And it also, well, it is graphic and it has little pictures. You don't expect a graphic novel. It is some in-depth text, like It's very textbook-like. I'm not saying it's like too hard to read or anything, but the pictures just are more of a embellishment than a medium, if that makes sense. And like I said, it does skip around. It doesn't really take a stance. It's just kind of like some people think this, some theorists would argue this, which is great. That's totally what it should do. But it almost gets convoluted because it doesn't like introduce all these points at once. It just kind of is like, oh, and then there's this also, and then there's this. I don't know. It's a fascinating issue, and some people on Goodreads were offended by it in how it, you know, in the fact that it presented certain viewpoints that might have been considered transphobic or was bi erasure or something. And I disagree with that. I think it's showing multiple perspectives of what queer theory is, and queering something inherently means removing that binary and removing the idea that there is one universal truth. That's what I'll say. So this book exists to present many viewpoints and a different perspective of reading media and of society and of personal interaction. I'm totally rambling. I really like this topic. But in summary, it's a very fascinating idea that this book raises, which is just, for example, calling yourself gay kind of reinforces the idea that there is such a thing as gay and straight, and that one is better than the other, and that you have to say you're one to prove you're not the other, and so on. And that's such a big part of all of our media. There's good and bad. There's black and white. There's there's gay and straight, and there's man and woman, and all those things are like pretty arbitrary and actually can be very harmful when it comes to power dynamics, when it comes to people who don't fit into those two options. All right, I'll stop rambling. It just expect this book is more like a textbook than a fun little graphic story. It's a bit heavier, and enjoyed it. But it was like it took me a while to get through. I'm putting out a B. Okay, I gotta hurry up. I'm rambling. Okay. Um. Oh man, here we go. Universal Harvester by John Darnielle. Apparently, he's the guy from the Mountain Goats, the band, which is really just him, I guess. I should know this, but I didn't know that. This book suffers from bad marketing. The cover looks cool. The premise sounds cool. It's about a guy who works at a Midwestern video store, and people keep coming in saying, somebody taped over this video, so there's like creepy stuff happening in the movie. And that's a creepy idea. Like, I can't wait to see where this goes. And everyone on Goodreads reviews says the same thing. Then it doesn't go there. It immediately shifts to this other narrative, and it's kind of boring, and it's like a Midwestern portrayal of life. And there's parts about like a cult and like missing people, but it's not scary. It's sad, and not even in like a poignant way. Like, I didn't identify with it at all. The whole time I was just like, I want this to be over. This is so boring. And only reason I kept reading is because it was audiobook and it was short. So I could finish it in like 4 hours. But oh my God, was it boring. I'm sorry, but like, I don't recommend it. And maybe if it had been billed as a literary fiction slice of life sort of thing, I I might have been more accepting, but honestly, I probably wouldn't have picked it up in the first place. The Marriage Clock. Now, this one is a rom-com, and that's what I was looking for at the time. I was like, give me some light, fun romance, and it's about an Indian American woman with Indian parents. They're from India, and so it's a lot about that culture, and I don't know much about that, so I was really intrigued about it. And it's about her parents want to set her up with an arranged marriage, which I find pretty interesting, and um, a lot of modern Americans are pretty opposed to it. I'm actually not that opposed. I think it um, could really work for some people, and that's kind of the central question is like, does she follow tradition with her parents, and like, is she asking for too much by searching for true love on her own and all that? And does love come after marriage? And these are really interesting questions that we all, especially 26-year-old women, um, I just forgot how old I was. Whatever, she's 26 in the book, and they're all like, "Oh my God, or maybe she's 20. I don't know. She's like 25 or something." And they're like, "You're so old. You gotta get married. Oh my gosh." And I've been there. We've all been there. I don't truly believe that you're too old to get married at all, but that's like the implication of a lot of societal expectations. So, even in America, and then way more so in India. So that was really cool to like read about some of Indian culture and Muslim culture and how that intersects with her as someone who grew up in America. And um, beyond all those cultural questions, which I think are great, it is lightly funny. Like, I wasn't like laughing out loud, but there were a couple things that I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. Um, with these kind of books, I tend to find really cringy dialogue or like stuff that's supposed to be hilarious, and it's just like, okay, we get it. You're a 50-year-old trying to write a 20-year-old's life. Like, oh, you're very cool. And this happened a couple times in this book, but for the most part, also, I don't know how old the author is. I'm just saying a lot of books are like that. Um, so there are maybe a couple things that like were supposed to be so funny, and like this main character is supposed to be like sassy, and um, she kind of judges people. Uh, so like, just for example, there's a guy she talks to who like smokes weed. He just like mentions he smokes weed or something, and she's just like, wow, really, this loser? Like, which is, that's a character, that's fine. But I think the narrative it was framed as like that guy's the joke, and I'm as the reader going, I don't care if this guy smokes weed. I hope that makes sense. That's where some of the humor was lost for me. That maybe it's just a difference in culture. I don't know. Um, yeah. So um, you kind of know what to expect with these kind of books, but I was pleasantly surprised that I didn't know exactly what she was going to choose or run into. However, it was going great because I was like, oh wow, this is actually like surprising me. The almost last scene is so cheesy. There's a slow clap involved, like an actual written out slow clap. That was cringy. So, nah. I think I'm going to put it at C. It was pretty actually enjoyable to read. It's very quick, fun, super interesting description of culture, but it's just a little bit contrived, or I don't know. Just, ugh. Also, her relationship with her friends was weird. Like, they just didn't talk like real friends or real people. I don't know why there were so many friends included. She could have just had the one friend. They did that thing with dialogue where they're just like saying each other's names in every single sentence. That was weird. So, anyway, let's just see. Normal People, Sally Rooney. This is my favorite book that I've read in at least the last year, but it's like one of my favorite books. And I know it's gotten a lot of hype, and I know there's also a lot of people who did not like it, who are justified. It is kind of a weird style of writing. She doesn't use quotation marks, um, and it's just kind of that literary fiction character study type thing where it's not going to be like a white knuckle ride. It's just two people who have a relationship going on over the course of several years. There's a show out of on Hulu, I think. I haven't seen that, but yeah, it's pretty popular. Um, I don't really know how to describe why I love this without going on a ramble. I think most people that like it because it is very human and relatable. For me, the dialogue was so truthful. The breakdown in communication was heartbreakingly truthful. It just was so real to me that I just kept putting it down and being like, I can't even read this anymore. It's too weird how it's hitting me. I didn't expect it to hit me emotionally, and it did. So that's all I'll really say about it. But it's an S tier book, I think. How to Do Nothing, Jenny Odell, is another one that's kind of like mistitled and mismarketed. It is not a how-to book, which I kind of knew, but I wasn't expecting like here's how you do nothing. I guess I just thought it would be a little more practical and a little less philosophical. It's very, very theoretical and in a very rambling way. It doesn't have chapters organized by topic, you know. It's just like a person talking to you. And I like the idea of it, and it's super. I mean, this person is very like articulate and they know what they're talking about. But it just it's really hard to follow. I just couldn't keep reading it. Um, I'm sure it's worth reading for some people, but I didn't finish it. I just knew I wasn't gonna get through it. Um, oh, and by the way, it's just about like not feeling like you have to be productive all the time, but it goes a lot into history about how people used to value that trait or that activity or whatever. So we're getting there. I'm trying to talk fast because it's like I don't want this to go on too long. um, well, you know what? If it's going on too long, you can totally leave. I hereby give you permission. So, Harry Potter again. This is the fourth one. Um, as I mentioned, I'm working my way through them because I never actually read them. I know, crucify me. And do I have to make a disclaimer every time I talk about Harry Potter? Maybe. Yeah, I know the author is a big yikes, but just talking about the book itself, it's very, very good. It's very entertaining. It's just really great at being a mystery, given hints and then they turn out to mean something later on, and characters are very real and very entertaining. So, yes, I know. I'm I don't need to review Harry Potter. It's on there. Oh, here we go. The Worst Best Man. This is another romance that I knew not to expect too much. Like, I just wanted to have a little fun, okay? Fun I did not get. I, so, um, premise is this woman who is notably Brazilian. She talks about it a lot. And she gets left at the altar, and the groom's brother, is the one that tells her. And then later on down the line, they end up having to work on this project together, and they act like they don't know each other in front of the boss person. And so she's mad at him because he convinced the groom to leave her. That's what she thinks happened. I still don't really get why she's so mad at this guy, but whatever. So they have this love-hate thing going on where they're just like, oh, I don't want to work with you, and they're super childish about it. Like, who would do this in their 20s or 30s or whatever they are? And then the weird thing is there's no build. There's no we hate each other and we're slowly starting to see. It's told in two perspectives from both of their sides. And it's just like the guy is immediately just like, oh, she's attractive, and oh, I just want to keep hanging out with her. And the girl kind of does the same thing, and they say something nice to each other, and then are like, oh shit, I'm supposed to be mad at you. It's literally like an episode of Jimmy Neutron. I can't I can't believe these are adults and it was written for adults. They were just middle schoolers, And I used to really like the hate love trope, like Mr. Darcy and all that. That's great. This is just not a good example of it. It's not believable. I don't care about these people at all. And the, I don't know, they go through these things related to Brazilian culture because she's Brazilian, and apparently I read some Goodreads reviews, of course, and some people were saying these aren't even things that actual Brazilians do. I don't know why these are happening. They're very inconsistent. And so for that reason, I just bring it up because I feel it's forced. It's I am all for having representation in literature, but write truthfully about that experience. People are more than I eat this food because I'm from this country, and I do this activity because that's what they do there. That's great, but do it in an authentic way. But that's not the main reason I disliked it. It's their relationship is just awful. They set up the pretense of certain activities. They're wedding planner. I should have mentioned she's a wedding planner, and they just see each other under certain pretenses. But it's really childish. It's I'm gonna try to get this guy to eat a bunch of cake. I don't know. It's really contrived. I didn't finish this one, needless to say. Am I the best at describing books and why I liked them, or what? Okay, almost there. This creepy cover is from Lolita. This is Lolita. It's a classic, and I have been meaning to read it. And I am intrigued by not even anti-heroes, main characters who are villains, I guess. A lot of people are like, why do we still read this book? It's sympathizing with pedophiles. And it isn't. It we aren't supposed to feel bad for this guy necessarily just because he's the narrator, you know? I think people need to use more critical skills when they say that kind of thing. Um, anyway, I understand why it's still considered a classic. It's well written. It is just it hits you. It's impactful because you're just like it's kind of hard to wrap your head around what a messed up situation this is, and you feel bad for not Lolita, like I don't want to call her that. That's not her name. Dolores. You feel bad for her, but and unfortunately it happens. I mean, this may not be like a true story, but it is true for some people, you know. And it is it's worth telling, but you also question like why did the author choose to write this? But that doesn't matter. Um, as a book, it is good. I feel I don't have a whole lot to add to the discussion about this book. It's good. Um, it also has parts that are kind of boring and rambling. Like, if you haven't caught on, I'm not really into books that are not modern. I know that's like not what I'm supposed to say. I just don't enjoy them very much. They don't have the pacing of modern novels because they didn't need it. That's what readers were okay with at the time. And I'm short attention span McGee. I don't like that. So, yeah, it does kind of get like, okay, what's this guy talking about? Let's move along to the action. But he's a very believable character, which is, scary and all. And I don't know if there's anything else to say about it. It's I guess it's a B. It's clearly like valued more than that, but that's what I'm giving it. And finally, we have Hot Lights, Cold Steel by Michael Collins. Dr. Michael Collins. This is just a memoir about a guy in his residency of becoming a doctor. I mean, we all kind of think of doctors as like this total other class of human. Like it's just hard to even understand what they do if you're not in that field. And being acquainted with a few doctors, and one of them who's in his residency, I've always been pretty fascinated by it, and I just wanted to understand what that life is like because it sounds kind of awful. And the book confirms it is kind of awful, but it was really interesting to read. However, the author is, I didn't appreciate how, like, every patient, especially, like, every female patient he has to comment on their level of attractiveness for some reason. I'm gonna chalk this down to, like, old dog, old tricks. What's the phrase? Like, he's in the habit of doing it because it's his generation. I'm not saying that's okay, but I think he genuinely just doesn't think about it. So that was kind of weird. And then the other thing is, he and his wife have 12 kids. I'm not trying to judge, but I have to say, the guy's complaining about having no money and no time to see his kids, and he just keeps having more kids. But sorry, that's more of a judgment on his life than on the book. It's just, when you're reading it and trying to sympathize with the narrator, and he's telling you, man, I have no money, let's have another baby. Why don't I have any money? Yeah, kind of made me face palm a little bit, but um, it's just my opinion. It's entertaining enough, and it tells a true story. I just get that like old man story vibe from it, where he just keeps telling me about how he went golfing with the guys, and they talked about boobs or something. Like it's just kind of like, okay, I don't really care about that. The seeing patients part was the more interesting. But even still, it wasn't probably the best doctor memoir out there. It just happened to be one that I had in my possession. So it was a quick read, though. It was fine. So there, folks, you have it. My opinions. And I've already apologized so many times. But again, I'm sorry. I don't know why. I just feel bad. I'm sorry, I just complain about all these books. But if you liked it, let me know. And if there are certain books you think I should read, I'm totally down to read them. So stay warm if you're in a cold climate, and if you are not, stay cool, I guess. And have a very nice February. Goodbye.